Johnny is always an entertaining speaker. Love it when Johnny speaks. I've actually had the pleasure of seeing Johnny at several DerbyCons over the years and a few other events in the community, and Johnny's got a great message. I'll do his quick bio here. Johnny spent a career as a pro hacker, penetrated and subsequently secured some of the world's most secure government, military, and corporate networks. He is currently a senior staff member at Offensive Security and the author of numerous security books, including No Tech Hacking and Google Hacking for Pen Testers. Johnny spent 7 years living full-time in Uganda, East Africa, where he focused his work with Hackers for Charity. And many of you probably know Johnny from Hackers for Charity and the amount of setup that Johnny had in his booths at Hackers for Charity and the great shirts that you could buy from Johnny over the years at various events, one of which Johnny's wearing right now, and I think I have 2 of those shirts as well. But it's always a pleasure to be able to contribute to the cause, and we've been very fortunate in the industry to have Johnny lead that cause for us as a community, which is really kind of cool. Hackers for Charity is a non-profit organization that leverages the skills of technologists to solve technology challenges for various non-profits and provide food, equipment, job training, computer education to some of the world's poorest citizens. So if you're interested in the cause, go visit hackersforcharity.org. Yeah, Johnny, you got a few comments there on kind of where things are with Hackers for Charity right now, or is this really part of your talk?
No, I can definitely talk about that. We've had a lot of volunteers starting to go over on their own, which has been great. As some of you know, I've been back in the U.S. for a little while, and man, things are still going strong. It's hard to keep up with it. A lot going on in the hacker space, the computer training center. We're down to our 3rd generation. Folks that I trained when I first went over there are now training others, and their students are now training others. And that's both on the computer training side, the leather shop, and in the hacker space. So it's really cool to see that kind of stuff going on and continuing, even though I'm not there day to day. And that was kind of the dream all along. So it's been cool to see that.
That's really fantastic. I do remember having a conversation with you, albeit briefly, several years ago. And at the time, we were talking about just the humongous need just to do basic infrastructure building in Uganda and in and amongst the countries that you had visited. Has that need actually started to diminish, and are you moving into a little more sophisticated areas with the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that I really wanted to see was I wanted to see the hacker community sort of getting together and use their powers for good. That's what it was all about. It just so happened that my journey took me to Uganda, and that's where a lot of our focus was. And of course, we saw a lot of need there, and the hacker community did a ton of stuff around that. But as we sort of expanded and Uganda started coming online a little bit more, we just really wanted to find a way that we could get people involved wherever they are. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about today is, what does it look like if, you're not able to travel, or, that you're not interested in that, or, you have different skills that you want to use. And so that dream is starting to become realized as we see more people in the community just getting out and doing stuff and making opportunities available.
Wow, it's such a great story, Johnny. We really appreciate the work that you've done, and I know there is plenty of people that have been inspired by watching you talk over the years and have wanted to get on board and help where they can, and it sounds like that has succeeded, and people have definitely gotten on board and got behind a lot of the things that you've been doing. So I think that's super exciting. And, frankly, as a community that is pretty well paid in the industry overall, I think it's almost, I'm trying to think of the word, spiritually important in some ways that people actually give that time of themselves and feel like they're contributing back. So I think you really struck a chord there and tapped into a need in the community that goes a little beyond just the needs of the people that you were serving, which is, it's really terrific to see.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure doing it, and I've gotten a lot of joy out of it, and it's really exciting when I see other people sort of get connected with things that they enjoy doing, and at the same time helping other people out. It's just it's really contagious. I don't know if that's an okay word to say anymore.
That's a good point. Are we going to start changing the vocabulary based on?
We might have to.
Yeah, and are we even going to talk about Trojan horses and virus in the Infosec community anymore? Maybe it's going to be a banned word or something.
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to come up with something. Unicorns or something. I don't know.
Yeah, blue unicorns, blue dancing
Blue
unicorns.
unicorns. Blue
Yeah.
dancing unicorns. There you go.
Well, we have managed to do a little pre-show banter and talked ourselves all the way to 1 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Pacific not Pacific, Eastern for me. I'll get my time zones right eventually. So without further ado, I turn everybody over to Johnny Long, and please enjoy the presentation. And don't forget at the end to drop into the Discord channel, track 2, and have some interactions with Johnny, ask a few questions, and hope you enjoy the presentation. Over to you, Johnny.
Thanks, Joff. I appreciate you, man. Let me go full screen here. All right, guys. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for taking the time to hang out today. Thanks for supporting Wild West Hackin' Fest. I mean, this is a unique situation we find ourselves in, and I think it's really cool in some respects that we've gone virtual. Kind of a new thing for me, and maybe for some of you. And I know how much it was. It was a little bit crazy there with hotels and flights and a whole lot of things up in the air, but it really means a lot that you guys supported the conference in this way and, kind of kept everything going. Thanks to John and the rest of the team for making that happen at the last minute. I personally think they made a good decision, just trying to keep people safe, and I just really appreciate them for that. Thanks for taking the time to be here. Some of you know me. My name is Johnny Long, and for years, I've kind of gone by this. This is how I've introduced myself for years and years. Christian husband, father, hacker, author, pirate, and ninja. And despite all of these cool claims to fame and things that I can kind of latch onto there, my life, like yours, I'm sure, has been a journey. And some of you know a little bit about my story, some of you might not. So I just want to give you kind of a brief overview of just some snapshots in my life. 2004 was a turning point for me in my career. I was pretty much on top of my game at that time. I had a great job. I was working full-time as a penetration tester, leading this great, terrific team. Back then, the rules were a little less rigid, and so we could do a lot of fun things that we really couldn't get away with these days in terms of how we learned and things that we were able to do on site. And it was just a fun time. Of course, getting paid pretty well for the privilege of doing what I loved. But at the same time, there was this sort of element of not really feeling fulfilled. I was unfulfilled, I was miserable, and I felt pretty empty. And I couldn't quite put my finger on what that looked like, what was going on. I didn't really understand at the time that I was missing out on something, that there was kind of more to life. And in my personal journey, that sort of culminated in me throwing up this simple prayer of, hey, God, do something with my life. And if we were to flash forward from that time to today, it would be a lot different. I would have to say 2004, if I was on top, then 2019 and 2020, I would consider myself to be over the top. I found fulfillment, and I'm generally joyful. I have sort of a different outlook on my life. And there's kind of a lot to be said for those little words. Now, my journey involved a trip to Uganda, as some of you guys know. And some of the things that we did over in Uganda were pretty incredible. One of the first things that happened when I went to Uganda is we saw a devastating fire in this squatter village, this tiny little village. This fire just ripped through this place and destroyed these homes, just one after another. And I put this video online and just said, man, I feel so helpless. Like, there's nothing that I can do. I'm watching hundreds of people lose everything. And one by one, these donations started coming in from the hacker community. And we were able to feed the folks that were affected by that fire, put them up for a couple days. More money came in. We were able to start rebuilding their homes. More money came in. We were able to start stocking their homes with the supplies that they lost. And one thing led to another. We had eventually rebuilt this entire village, stocked the necessities that folks had lost in the fire. Fortunately, no one was severely injured or had lost their lives. And we still had more money. And I went into this village and I was kind of talking to people, and a lot of them were just sitting around. They didn't have jobs. They didn't have job skills. So we used money that kept coming in to train these folks in different skills, one of them being leather crafting, to give them jobs. And that's how we started our leather crafting project. But that was just kind of one example of hackers digging in and helping us do things to help people on the other side of the world that they had never met. We started bringing computers that were donated by the hacker community and putting those into schools. We started a computer training center. The idea there was to give people access to computer training, most of which had never touched a computer. I mean, imagine giving somebody computer training and they don't understand the basic principles of like how the mouse works, and the fact that you move the mouse one way and the cursor follows. It was that level of training, and we were thrilled to take folks like that didn't have any experience with computers and get them jobs, technical jobs in various industries so that they could provide for their families. And the hacker community helped us build that from the ground up. We also started a hacker space to take technology training to the next level. These kids that were just loving technology so much and absorbed it so fast, they're asking us questions like, when can we 3D print? And they're asking me about robots, and they're asking me about drones and all this stuff. And honestly, like one of my first reactions to that was, heck yeah, like we should totally do this. And then like on the other side, the other voice inside of me was like, that doesn't make like a whole lot of sense when we're trying to train people to get jobs because there's desperate poverty. How can we justify robotics programs and 3D printing and all that? Well, fortunately, the hacker side of me won out. And we just started bringing in equipment to give these kids access to something new. And man, I was so glad that we did that, because what happened was it sort of changed the mentality of what technology could do in their communities. And they started thinking outside the box and coming up with solutions that I never would have dreamed of that they're starting to roll out to their community. So that was really exciting to see. And one of the other crazy things we did is we opened a restaurant because we were living in a tourist town. It was right on the source of the Nile River. And folks would come from all over the world. And we thought, man, wouldn't it be great to set up like a coffee shop and a restaurant with maybe some Western food that a lot of the tourists would recognize and fast internet. And so we started a restaurant. And the primary thing there was to sort of give the tourists that came through a safe place that they could just brush the dust off when they're doing their thing and helping out, but at the same time provide job opportunities for the locals that were there. And so all those initiatives are still running. We're going on 10 years, which is unbelievable to look back. 10 years of most of these programs up and running, slowly turning them over. We turned the restaurant over to the local Ugandan managers that we had trained, and now they're full owners of the restaurant. And so through all of this, one of the things that's amazing is that the hacker community paid for all of this. I always like to bring up the fact that when we first mentioned that we were going to Uganda on one of our first trips, our primary backers from the hacker community were an atheist, an agnostic, a Wiccan, and a Jew. And I say that with a chuckle because, as a Christian guy, a lot of them said, hey, we don't believe what you believe spiritually, but we really like your ideas and what you're trying to do with helping people. And so seeing the hacker community really give in that way, even though we had some things that we probably could have argued about, that didn't really happen. And so that, I think, is one of the things that really makes the hacker community special, is that we're able to transcend those kinds of things, work together to just do amazing things. So my journey was somewhat unique. I went from being a professional hacker and a pen tester to slogging it out in East Africa and Uganda for a total of 7 years full-time with my family. That part of the journey was certainly unique. But the experience of creating something that the community could get behind and organizing it, that was also unique at the time. Well, today, that's not a unique situation. It's not that there wasn't a lot of great work happening in the community back then. It's just there wasn't organization around it. And that's changed. There's a lot of things going on in the hacker community and a lot of really good things going on. And so what I want to do with this talk is I just want to take a little bit of time to give you just some snapshots, like some still frames of the journey of a few of my friends, people that you may or may not know, but community members that are making a difference. And that's kind of what this talk is about. So hackersforcharity.org is kind of where it all started with me. Some of you may know these guys. This is Mubix and Ben 10, and they are, of course, Infosec rock stars. And the journey that they took together that I want to talk about that was kind of unique started with a talk that he did at his kid's school about security hygiene. And even saying it that way kind of makes me chuckle because I know how this story ended up. He said that the talk about security hygiene sucked. It was really boring. And, you know, there was a little bit of a psychology kind of issue there around authority that he had done this talk at the same class as a police officer who came in and talked about his job. So here's Mubix talking about sort of hacking and security hygiene, and there's a police officer giving his talk about being a police officer. And the kids really paid attention to the police officer. Not that they shouldn't, but he was like, man, there's really an interesting dynamic here because, you know, kind of being a hacker and talking about hackers is pretty cool too. And so he sort of looked at that situation and was like, well, what would it look like, you know, if we changed up this model a little bit? Because my talk was struggling a little bit, but the cop was cool. So what he decided to do is he's like, okay, we're gonna team up with police officers. And the idea was we'll get police officers to come alongside of us and start doing these talks in classrooms. And the idea was the police officers could sort of provide that intro. They could, you know, provide, you know, a safe introduction, and that they would work together. Because really, the things that the police officers were talking about were children's safety, ways that they can stay safe. And of course, there's tons of issues around cybersecurity and awareness that fits that bill as well. So he really had this unique idea of getting hackers and police officers working together. And the goal was to really educate students about different cybersecurity topics, including cyberbullying, online stranger contact, phishing awareness, password, user account and password security, and just general online security hygiene, and came up with a name for this thing called Hackers in Education. So this is the kind of interesting thought process that they went through to create something that was fairly unique, pretty unique in the industry. I mean, police officers working alongside hackers to create something new. Well, one of the things that happened is that grew really fast, and they were able to basically bring that message to nearly every school in their district once they teamed up. So they started to see a little bit of growth. Along those lines, I want to introduce Jay Smith. He goes by Simple Skink on Twitter. He is a self-taught digital forensics and malware analyst. One of the things he says he loves doing is he loves breaking down complex information security principles to non-techies and students. So he kind of found out about Hackers in Education. This is his company, and he decided that he was going to look into what they were doing and see if he could help out. And this was his Twitter post. Like, I also took up the cause of talking to schools. Shout out there for Hackers in Education. And he says, since then, I've spoken at 8 local schools and even began workshops for teens and Girl Scouts in Louisville. So it's really cool to see these two guys, Mubix and Ben 10, coming up with this interesting and kind of quirky idea, growing it a little bit, and then the community kind of picks up and runs with it. And that was my passion behind Hackers for Charity, is I was doing stuff that made me feel good and gave me purpose. As I grew through that, one of the things I wanted to do was share it with the community and get others involved. We've been able to do that, but this model is wonderfully sustainable because all it takes is one person to get excited about it, to connect with another person that's excited about it, and it grows together. So really cool how that one grew. The next group I want to talk about is this is Sarah Hansen and Michelle Massaro, and these folks are STEM and technology teachers in Canada. They're not hackers per se. I'm gonna say that right out, but they're awesome people, and they're just superhero nerds that are into all kinds of advanced technology. And one of the things that they wanted to do is they wanted to inspire students in Canada and Uganda about STEM education. And they said, we love learning and strongly believe in the power of education to foster change. Now, the thing that's cool about these guys is we had just stood up our hackerspace in Uganda, and it was sort of, it was small but growing, and we had brought over quite a bit of equipment. And these two came to our town in Uganda, Jinja, and were kind of poking around, talking to people. Hey, we're robotics teachers, and we have this idea about doing crazy robotics stuff in Uganda and teaching kids. And they ended up meeting the guy that was running our hackerspace and had a conversation with him. And he's like, well, we kind of are already doing that. Come check out what we're doing. They were so blown away by this connection that through the years, they've started taking over different aspects of the hackerspace, getting more people involved, getting more schools involved. They're able to be there in the hackerspace when I'm not. And so they sort of attached to this thing and just grew it more than I ever could. One of the things that they're trying to do is they're trying to get our Ugandan kids to do outreach, and they've been successful at that. And we're in the third generation now, where our students have become teachers that taught others, and they became teachers that taught others. And so now our original kids are the teachers that go around to other schools teaching them about all these topics. Really cool to see how that happened. And their organization is Just Cause Uganda. Next is Matt Svensson. His sort of tagline, Christian husband, veteran, blue team for life, we can still get along, and product integration whisperer. Now, he was inspired by Hackers for Charity and other groups, but what he really wanted to do was he wanted to bring sort of a blue team version of this, offering some specifically defensive solutions to charities that couldn't afford them. And so what he does is he created this organization called We Defend Charities. And I thought it was pretty cool. He kind of reached out to me about the name, and he's like, is this a little too close? Like, are you okay with this? I was like, dude, this is awesome. So it's called We Defend Charities. And one of the things that they do is they're just brand new, still starting up, but they just want to help defend charities, to help them protect the vulnerable. So they're looking for folks to help them out in different ways. They're looking for charities to help. They're looking for volunteers to actually work with charities that they know about in their community. Looking for some web designers, but really cool stuff. Kind of a new organization, but excited to see where Matt's going to go with this. Obviously, providing free consultation and hands-on assistance. Love that. Next is Amanda Berlin. Some of you know her from different places. She is information security architect and analyst, an author and host of the Breaking Down Security podcast. So her journey was kind of interesting. I love it. She was basically, as she says it, she was stressed, she was anxious, and she was talking about it. So she would get on social media like Twitter and start talking about, anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. One of the things that she talked about that really sort of resounded with me was she talked about anxiety at conferences. So, she works remote. She'd go to a con, and boom, just like that, it's 24/7, full on, face-to-face with people, connecting, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm getting seriously stressed out about this. And I was like, amen, like you preach it, sister, because I could relate to that. I mean, I would go to conferences and people would know me, and I thought that was great, and I'd love talking to people, but at the same time, my life was pretty much in a room by a keyboard, working remote by myself, and it was a shock. So one of the things that she wanted to sort of get out there was that even social people who aren't introverted and kind of love, this interaction stuff can still have struggles. And a lot of times it can be hard, especially at conferences. And so she loved speaking and got a little bit of exposure around kind of this line of conversation. But she was like, wouldn't it be great if we could do more? So she kind of came up with this workshop idea that turned into a village, and it made its debut at DerbyCon 2018. And she just basically created this quiet place where you could take a break from everything. They had, therapeutic talks. They had different massage chairs and professional therapists. They had a trial table, they had weighted blankets you could try out, these calming teas and air loungers. And basically, she just created this oasis, but also a place where you could get information and support around mental health issues. And so that organization ended up becoming Mental Health Hackers. And the village has all kinds of workshops and resources. And man, they've just really taken off. And they're just a bunch of hackers helping hackers. And they're talking about just sort of this unique angle of mental health. So really love what Amanda's doing there. Lots of volunteer opportunities. She's constantly looking for folks to help out. Really cool. Love what she's doing. Next is Chris Sanders. One of his intros is that he's just a small town boy. And I was like, hey, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what do you mean small town boy? And he was like, man, I grew up in Graves County, Kentucky. And I kind of thought to myself, if you have to tell somebody like the county, like that's an indicator, right? And he's like, yeah, it was kind of rural. And so I did like a Google search and trying to do street view on this thing. And sure enough, his story checked out. It was like farms, and there was a Tractor Supply place. And yeah, that was like it. He literally grew up in a small town. He loved technology, but where he lived, he just didn't have access to it. He didn't have the resources that he needed to help him grow. Teachers saw his potential, which was kind of key to his growth. And he went on to become the first college grad in his family, tech education company founder, security expert, and author. And it's been really amazing kind of hearing that growth. He took it to the next level. And as he became more settled in his life and started to become more successful, he wanted to pay back that opportunity that he was given and created the Rural Tech Fund, Rural Technology Fund. The tagline, talent is distributed equally, but opportunity often isn't. So his whole thing is, man, let's do what we can to just try to get some resources in the hands of students to help make a difference in their lives, get them interested in technology, kind of show them what it's all about. He has some really great stories if you talk to him about different places that they've been and places that they've helped out. One of the stories I love is Anvik, Alaska, which is on the Iditarod. It has a population of 80. In this town, they had 12 students and one teacher. And they reached out to Chris, and they're like, yep, so this is Anvik, Alaska, population 80, 12 students. Can you help us? And they were like, yeah, we can help you. So they hooked them up and got some resources to them and came alongside and helped them grow. Lots of really cool stories around just these little places where he's helping out. Another one was Hunterdon County Library in New Jersey. RTF made a donation to them of just some microbits to their library. They just didn't have anything. So the library took these microbits, started doing classes around them, started teaching STEM classes. Because they were doing STEM classes, they were able to get grants to get more bits and more equipment. And now they have a huge lab. And students can check out different gear. And the library actually now conducts classes in the local schools. So one thing that I just love about this is it doesn't take much to sort of kickstart a program or get students really interested in things that are going on. And at this point, Rural Tech Fund has touched, I think it's around 115,000 students in various ways. Although it's very grassroots in the way that it operates, the potential is huge. So really cool stuff going on at the Rural Tech. Chris Cox, here's his sort of tagline: security evangelist, fixes most things that he breaks. I have no idea what that means. I don't know what it means to fix things. So kind of lost about that one, but he does it. DoD cybersecurity instructor and founder of the Operations Security Professionals Association. Pretty cool stuff. His story is that his wife was a victim of abuse. His journey began with his organization. The abuse that she endured kind of fueled his desire to fight against tech-enabled abuse. And he created an organization called Operation Safe Escape. And the idea here is that he helps victims of domestic violence, stalking, and harassment kind of escape their abusers and stay safe after they do. So he works with victims online and in person, basically to help them plan and execute their escape, make sure that they have resources, things like that, and then provides OPSEC education for different organizations, shelters, safe houses, and also educates law enforcement. Now, they do both OSINT and anti-OSINT work, which is really cool, using members of the community. Because they're working closely together with law enforcement, there's kind of an agreement and sort of an impromptu information and education exchange that's happening there that's really cool. Really, I mean, what he's trying to do is just assist victims of domestic violence. And I love how he puts this: educate, escape, and empower. Chris has a lot of stories as well about cool things that he's doing. I love how he's using OSINT volunteers in really clever, well thought out, and safe ways. He's got lots of stories. One that I love is how he had helped a young woman escape from her abuser who had been stalking her for about 5 years. And she was just not sleeping through the night. She was having panic attacks. And Chris's organization, Operation Safe Escape, was able to come alongside of her, help her, get her free. And she said recently that she's sleeping through the night, which sounds like a small thing. But just to get to that point, if you've ever been in a situation where something has just got you that bad that you can't even sleep, even just getting a good night's sleep, realizing that you're safe and you've put it behind you is a huge deal. Operation Safe Escape has also helped the New York Police Department, NYPD, and he's trained through his organization every single domestic violence officer in the NYPD. And he's also partnered with the 211 program in multiple states that just help provide assistance during high-risk situations. So if somebody calls 211, a lot of times they'll get transferred to Operation Safe Escape. So again, very cool organization, just a bunch of security professionals helping vulnerable populations escape abuse and harassment. Operation Safe Escape. Bill Pollock. Most of you folks know Bill. He is the founder of No Starch Press and a fixture in the hacker community since 1999. Man, there's no better way to say that. Bill has not only spearheaded lots of amazing books through No Starch Press, but he's also present at the conferences, and every time he's at a conference, he's always looking for ways to help. Just love his heart. Super, super smart guy, just has a heart of gold. And his interesting story kind of starts when he was harassed as a young nerd on the spectrum. And all he wanted to do was just learn. He got a lot of abuse for that, just wanting to learn and educate himself and be smarter. And one of the things that he's seen in his life is that a lot of times parents and friends struggle with kids that are in those situations, that really love learning about science, technology, engineering, math, these kind of nerdy things. In some cases, they can be ostracized or suggested that they go a different direction with their career and that kind of thing. And so Bill's really had a heart for that. That's totally evident in the No Starch Press Foundation, which is his foundation that he started. And basically what they do is they support STEM initiatives, they create contests, scholarships, educational programs for young potential hackers. Through the years, Bill has donated, I think he's over $800,000 from his company just to support education in poorer neighborhoods. And he basically loves coming alongside self-taught hackers, helping them get their first real tech jobs, develop a career, and kind of establish themselves in the hacker community. So he does a whole lot of support He runs meetups to talk about all kinds of things, everything from tech to depression and suicide in the hacker community. Talks about the aspect of isolation and the misunderstanding that comes along in regards to the aims and interests of hackers. And one of the quotes that I like is that he says, "We can all reach out to help people like us to be challenged and fulfilled, to become part of a community that supports and understands us." Really cool stuff. So had a great company doing great things with his business with No Starch Press, but basically reconnected with his journey and his struggles and found a way to pay it back. Really love Bill's story. Great stuff. Chris Hadnagy, another rock star in the industry, security expert, author, socialengineer.org founder, and world-class instructor. Man, those aren't his words. Those are mine. Chris is just a great dude with an interesting story. Most of you know him through socialengineer.org. And some of you, maybe recently, if you've caught any of the villages or things that he's done recently, have caught glimpses of what he's really up to today. And that started early in his work when he witnessed the horror of child trafficking. The backstory to that is that Chris kind of worked several cases early in his career, helping track and capture predators who were exploiting children. And this hit him really hard. This impacted him in a deep way, that these innocent victims were being exploited, and there was not much that they could really do about it. You know, the law enforcement was on their heels. They were reacting instead of being proactive. And so that really touched Chris, and he decided he wanted to do something different. So he created the Innocent Lives Foundation. And he had an interesting kind of start to this thing. He basically teamed up with a literal rock star, a famous actress, and an FBI heavyweight, and created this foundation. And basically their goal is to hunt, unmask, and identify child predators and hand them over to law enforcement. So he will use all kinds of social engineering and OSINT and all kinds of really cool stuff that a lot of times he teaches in the different villages to kind of identify these predators, turn the case files over to law enforcement, and then pursue justice on behalf of the children within the existing judicial process. So this is not like a vigilante operation. This is really coming alongside law enforcement, using the resources of the hacker community and folks within that organization to work alongside law enforcement to bring justice to these kids. Really amazing stuff. Innocent Lives Foundation. So in my journey, if we were to look back to just a few years ago, 2017, this was about when we were starting to come back from Uganda. And I got a job with a little company you may have heard of, OffSec. The offensive security was generous enough to bring me out of the wilderness, figuratively and literally. I mean, guys, I had been out of the industry professionally for 7+ years. And when I came back, you know, and we decided it was time to come back, I was like, man, getting a job is going to be rough, because there were a lot of people that were interested in hiring me for my name, but at the same time, 7 years in the wilderness. And really a lot of folks wanted me for what I used to do, which was penetration testing. And man, Mutz and the folks at Offensive Security, who've been friends for the longest time, gave me an opportunity to work there, which is amazing. Still there. Happy to talk about that. But looking back from 2017, I had worked on over a dozen book projects. I had gotten world recognition through the books and the talks and stuff that I did in the hacker community. Spent 7 years in Uganda. I'd been running this amazing nonprofit. Like I said, we were third generation in most of our programs. Our students teaching other students who are teaching other students. All of our programs are still running. Although I wasn't making a ton of money, I did find purpose and fulfillment in my life. Although there was a lot going on in my life and there was still more for me to do, I was in a much better place than I was back in 2004. 2019 and early 2020, I can say, yeah, that was a good start, but my story gets even better. I ended up spending the past 2 years dealing with a lifetime of hurts, habits, and hangups in a formal recovery process. I didn't realize that I had a lot of stuff that I needed to deal with. Some of it had to do with Uganda. Some of it had to do with my childhood. But I found peace and joy and have a real relationship with my family. We're closer than ever. That's a different talk. But it all started with stepping out of my comfort zone. And that stretched me, and it grew me in ways that I didn't know I needed to grow. I'm thankful, and honestly, I'm blessed for that fresh perspective on my place in the world. And I'm so thankful that I've been given the opportunity to help so many people. But it all began with that slight change of focus and that opportunity to serve others. So what I want to encourage you guys is that, wherever you are in your journey, I want to encourage you to take that step. Take a step towards service. Find a way that you can possibly help out, because I guarantee you it's going to change your perspective. And you might think your skills don't matter. You might go, well, what can I do? I'm only, X, Y, Z. I can only do these things. But every person in this presentation was just doing life. I mean, they were using their skills to help another person. And, well, you have skills, abilities, and gifts. You've been through some junk, and you've seen some stuff. Your journey matters. Your story and your skills can make a difference. Your tagline is, never underestimate your power to make a positive impact. So that's it, guys. That's just my encouragement to you, is that there's a lot of cool stuff that you can connect with that's going on out there. There's a lot of really cool things to be done that only you can do. And I can definitely speak firsthand when I say that it can make a huge difference in your life. So if you're at that point where you're going, man, there's a lot of things going good for me, maybe work's going really well, or I have all these things that are going good, but I kind of feel like I'm not where I need to be, or there's something else out there. I just want to encourage you guys to get involved. Here's the list of organizations that we've covered today. A whole bunch of really great organizations. Our website's up there as well. We have a Slack channel that we've stood up if you want to discuss any of this or just ask questions. All these organizations would love to hear from you, and we would as well.